Bionicle has a lot of awesome characters. The heroic Toa, the villainous Makuta, the courageous Matoran, and all the Rahi Dark Hunters and more in between. Most are fantastic characters and are very well written, but some, well, for whatever reason, there are some characters that are just plain weird. Maybe they were killed abruptly, maybe they had a crazy secret identity, or maybe they were just completely inconsequential to the story at large. Regardless, not all the characters stuck the landing completely. Today, we'll be talking about some of those. I'm Meso, and welcome to the top 10 weirdly written Bionicle characters. Kicking off the list at number 10, we've got Toa Lesovic, introduced in Bionicle 2007. Lesovic was an interesting character, and he starred in his very own story serial, Dreams of Destruction. The leader of the Toa Kordak, the first actual Toa team, Lesovic hesitated for a fatal second, and his entire team was massacred during a battle with a tribe of Zyglak. He also had an axe to grind with Karzani, as when he returned back home, he found that a mad Turaga had shipped all of his friends off to Karzani's realm, never to return. In Dreams of Destruction, he is portrayed as a very vengeful character, someone who's lost absolutely everything and is trying to seek redemption, trying to become worthy of being called a hero again. The problem with Lesovic is that he doesn't really do anything. He attempts to fight Karzani, but Karzani escapes and ends up being defeated and driven insane by Makuta Pterrordax. Lesovic then attempts to chase down the wounded Karzani and finish him for good, but he gets trapped in an illusion, and it's up to Sarda and Idris to bait Karzani into the trap. Presented with the opportunity to take revenge against his foe, he doesn't take it. Instead, Botar teleports Karzani away. Lesovic goes off somewhere to journey with Sarda in the pit, and that's really that. What's most baffling about his character is that he shows up twice more in the Bionicle story, and both times also involve him doing nothing. He shows up briefly in Destiny War, has one line of dialogue while talking to Hydraxon, and that's that. Greg confirmed on Busy Power that Lesovic and Sarda did leave the pit and join the Order of Mononui's war efforts, but we never see Lesovic again until the 2011 post-ending story serial called The Powers That Be. In that serial, he shows up again to hunt Karzani down. We see him for one chapter, where he leaves to begin his hunt. In the next, Karzani is dead. Lesovic gets framed for murder, and we never see him again because the Bionicle storyline was never properly concluded. He's just a bizarre character, somebody who has super interesting backstory and is a super interesting character in his own right, but never really got the chance to do anything or contribute to the overarching story in any meaningful way. That doesn't mean his story is bad, or that he as a character is bad. It just makes him worthy of being on this list. Next up at number 9, we have Ancient, the Shadowed One's best friend and co-founder of the Dark Hunters. Ancient and the Shadowed One created the organization known as the Dark Hunters in the distant past, but shortly after the Foul Group was formed, Ancient was paid and hired by the Order of Motonui to spy on the Dark Hunters. While this fact was implied to the audience several times, it was outright stated in Chapter 6 of the 2008 story serial Destiny War, and in that very same chapter, just several paragraphs later, Ancient gets murdered by the Shadowed One for completely unrelated reasons. Him being a spy might as well not have even been part of the story at all. His death by TSO's hands certainly did wonders to establish just how twisted he is, but it did very little for Ancient's character. There was prime material there for story conflict if his betrayal were to come to light, and the storytelling potential that could have been far outweighs the sudden and brutal ending he received. The number 8 spot goes to Takanuva, Toa of Light. Arguably the main character, or at least one of them, for the first 3 years of Bionicle, Takanuva, or Takua, has been through quite a lot. He was the playable character in both the Monodui Online game and Bionicle Quest for the Toa, as well as the main protagonist in the first Bionicle movie, Mask of Light. Takanuva was set up to be incredibly powerful and the key to saving Motonui, as well as fighting back the evil of Makuta. He did that, kind of, during Mask of Light, though he did not defeat Makuta as he assumed at the time, and then he promptly disappeared from relevance for 5 years. Oh sure, he made a brief appearance in Bionicle 2006, but he was swiftly abandoned by the Matoran as they entered the realm of Karzani. The two back-to-back Metro Nui prequel years, combined with the first two acts of the Ignition trilogy, put Takanuva firmly in the back seat, and even though he received a large amount of screen time in Bionicle 2008, the majority of the role he played was spent adventuring in 3 alternate universes: the City of Silver Pocket Dimension, the Kingdom Universe, and the Toei Empire Universe. His role in 2008 essentially amounted to a simple messenger, as his primary goal was to warn the Takanuva about the energy storm in Cardanui, but his total screen time was inflated by these constant detours and side quests that were, in all fairness, very well written and interesting. His appearance in the Bionicle Stars wave in 2010 attempted to give him more screen time and a role in Bionicle's ending, and it did succeed in this somewhat, but it's still weird that a character with such forward momentum in the early years was put on the back burner for so long. Coming in at number 7, we've got Karzani, the mad tyrant of his own twisted realm, named after himself, of course. Karzani was first introduced in 2006 during the second book, Dark Destiny. Karzani was created by the Great Beings 100,000 years ago and tasked himself with taking in bad Matoran, intending to repair them and send them to their homelands. He failed horribly at this and turned bitter and angry as a result. In denial of his own failings, Karzani became a recluse and was only discovered by the Matoran in 2006 as they adventured to Voya Nui. His appearance in that book is incredible and highlights his interesting character and absolutely menacing nature. His powers were unique, his presence memorable, and his legendary nature suitably imposing. The ending of the book set him up almost conclusively to be a force to be reckoned with much later on. Logic would dictate that perhaps he would become the Enaika's version of Makuta Pterrodax, an archenemy who would constantly chase after them and do battle with them, or at least have some major role in the story to properly follow his introduction. So what happened? Well, he randomly showed up underwater in Mari Nui in several 2007 story serials, having followed the Enaika there, and became the archenemy of Toa Lesovic, a heroic character seemingly only created to become Karzani's archenemy. He then did battle with Makuta Pterrodax in an admittedly very well written encounter that played to both characters' strengths. However, Pterrodax literally ripped apart his mind with ease, leaving this once potentially interesting and fearsome character a hollow shell of his former self, driven to complete insanity. Worse, a shell that was swiftly captured by 2 Matoran and taken out of the story entirely. He would reappear later on in the 2011 story serial The Powers That Be, where he gets murdered off-screen by Velika. Karzani was an excellent character, and his 2007 appearance was written very well, but I can't help but shake my head at the wasted potential in his character. I'm not really sure that he needed to feature in the 2007 storyline. He could have been saved for later, even to possibly become the next main antagonist of the story once Pterrodax died. Ah well, can't win them all, I suppose. At number 6, we have Perdita, a Glatorian from Barra Magna, who appeared in the year of 2009. Perdita was released in the Thornatus V9 vehicle set as the vehicle's pilot, and well, it's about the only interesting thing he ever did. Perdita earns his spot on this list by being a complete footnote in Bionicle's history. He never once appeared in the story proper, not in the movie, not in the comics, not in the books, not in the graphic novels, nada. The only 3 bits of plot-related insights we have on his character come in Matanui's Guide to Barra Magna, a tiny blurb on the Bionicle website, and from Greg Farshdi himself in his Q&A topic on the LEGO message boards. In the guidebook, Perdita has one quote attributed to him. "I do my duty, and I do it the best I can. That doesn't mean I have to enjoy it." Riveting stuff, I know. The Bionicle website describes him as very focused, having no time for friends. Incredibly exciting character here, folks! Thirdly, Greg confirmed in 2017 that Perdita was a secret agent loyal to Velika, the great being in disguise. Super interesting stuff! Wait, that actually is pretty interesting. This little bit of revisionist backstory was a unique effort by Greg to add some relevancy to his character. But it ultimately fell short because, well, he didn't do anything. He literally never factored into the Bionicle story whatsoever. Him being an agent of Velika never played a role in anything, so there's no reason for the audience to care about it in any way. So that's Perdita. Not too much to say about him. Speaking of Velika, though, he's taken the number 5 spot on this list. Velika was a Pomator introduced in Bionicle's 2006 storyline, and became beloved in the community for his inclination to go on long-winded diatribes, spouting wisdom in the form of anecdotal stories, riddles, and general ramblings. He was a quirky Matoran, and nothing more, until it was later revealed by Greg Farshty that he was a great being in disguise, going around murdering important figures in the Bionicle Universe in the 2011 story serial The Powers That Be. Greg planned to reveal his identity as a great being and the murderer in the story proper, but as he found himself unable to continue writing Bionicle, he opted to reveal the info on BZ Power instead. Another little interesting fact revealed by Greg about Velika is that he is the one who gave true sapience to the biomechanical inhabitants of the Matoran universe. That's right, this throwaway Matoran character from 2006 is actually the reason why anyone in the Matoran universe has free will, conscious thought, and emotions. He's the reason that literally the entire story takes place. It's super interesting stuff, and would have been far more interesting if we had actually gotten all these revelations in the story proper, versus having Greg just tell us everything via Q&A. Alas, such is the fate of the Bionicle fandom. The number 4 spot on this list goes to Brutaka, former Order of Maranui member turned renegade. Let me talk to you for a minute about Brutaka. Introduced as a villain character in Bionicle's 2006 storyline, Brutaka was a former hero who fell from grace after losing faith in the Great Spirit Maranui. After the Great Cataclysm, Brutaka believed that Maranui had either died or abandoned the universe, and as such, promptly became disillusioned in his duties. When the Paraka came to Voya Nui in search of the Kanohi Ignika, Brutaka aided them, fighting Matoran, the Takanuva, and the Toa Inaika, all the while harboring a desire to claim the Mask of Life for himself. This culminated in Brutaka's battle with Axon, his former best friend, who he attempted to kill numerous times. Brutaka was defeated and taken to the pit, where his villainy persisted. He attempted to gain the Mask of Life once more, but was dragged away by one of Kalma's giant squids. And here begins the weirdness. When we next see Brutaka after being dragged away by the squid, it is in one of 2007's story serials, where he comes into conflict with Makuta. He says this: "I fell a long way from the light, and I can never find my way back. But the darkness is not so complete that I can't recognize a monster when I see one." He fights Makuta, stops him from achieving his goal, and then reappears once more in 2008, again under the Order of Maranui's employ as part of their Destiny War, gathering allies and forces for the upcoming war against Makuta. Him and Axon reunite, friends again, and continue the fight against evil. Listeners, if it feels like I skipped a few pivotal events during my recap of his character, rest assured I did not, but you're not alone in feeling that way. Brutaka is an awesome character, fearsome, powerful, and nuanced. He was a very effective villain, but complex enough to where I would have greatly enjoyed seeing a redemption arc where he realizes the error of his ways and comes back to the light side. But we didn't get that. His redemption happens completely off screen, and in between 06 and 08, his entire personality shifts almost completely, with the only event in between that could possibly act as a catalyst for this growth being his brief conflict with Makuta. I'm all for uniting with your adversaries and enemies against the greater evil, but Brutaka's entire demeanor changes. Him and Axon are just best buds again, quipping with each other like nothing ever happened. It's like he never was a villain in the first place. From 2008 onwards, a bunch of crazy stuff happens to him, like getting possessed by the collective consciousness of the Makuta species, but his off-screen redemption arc and complete personality shift more than warrant his appearance on this list. As we move into the top 3, let's talk about Botar, everyone's favorite Order of Maranui agent / plot device. Botar was a character first introduced in 2006. His primary duty was to capture those who had committed acts the Order had deemed unforgivable and banished them to the pit. He was also known to act as a courier, transporting items and beings to the locations they were needed. In essence, he was basically just a plot device. If the plot needed someone or something to get teleported away, the Baraki, Brutaka, Karzani, Takanuva, the staff of Artaka, etc., Botar was your guy. He could make it happen. That's not to say he didn't have a personality. He had a very unique and intimidating presence, believing in absolute morality and adhering to the will of Maranui and absolute justice above anything else. Primarily, though, he functioned as a very useful character to have around when the plot needed to reposition the pieces on the figurative chessboard that was Bionicle's story, which made it baffling when they killed him in an off-screen battle between himself and Makuta Icarax. Botar was killed. Helrix randomly mentions it during a conversation with Takanuva, leaving readers stunned, even more so when he's later replaced in the Order of Maranui by another member of his species who has the same teleporting power, so functions in the exact same role. More so, this replacement is never given a name. Let's recap. You have a cool character who functions as a very useful plot device, just familiar enough for readers to take note when he appears and be like, oh hey, it's that guy, but not be familiar enough with him to be truly invested in his character or anything like that. You kill him in an off-screen battle with a villain we hadn't properly met yet, only to then replace him with a functionally identical character, except one who doesn't have a name and has no personality to speak of for the audience to connect with. Why? If you were going to sacrifice an Order of Maranui agent to show the readers how much of a bad dude Makuta Icarax was, you could have picked anyone else, another one of the no-name agents that nobody really cares about, like Trinuma or something. It just seems incredibly pointless and weird to go through the trouble of killing Botar as if the audience would actually care about his death. I mean, we never really knew him as a character on a personal level to like be sad that he would die. He just functioned a role in the plot, and instead they kill him, but they then replace him. So the story remains intact and unchanged. There's no insight into Botar's character, no cool fight scene with Icarax, no interesting death scene. Nothing is different except a cool character is gone and replaced by a non-character, someone we know nothing about. It's weird, and it makes his death feel very pointless, and as such, Botar deserves his spot in third place. The second place on this list goes to Tuyet. Oh yeah, we're going there. I apologize because Tuyet does not actually have a canon visual representation, so when I talk about her, I'm going to use this awesome poster of what Tuyet could have looked like, made by Bionicle superfan and awesome creator of Okoto Origins, Metrunui Legacy, so go check him out. Back to the top 10 though. Tuyet was first introduced in a short story aptly titled The Many Deaths of Toa Tuyet that chronicled a flashback from the days of Metrunui. Tuyet was a Toa who went rogue, seeking to gain ultimate power through the use of a relic called the Nui Stone, which could absorb the energy of Toa. She murdered several Matoran and framed the Dark Hunters for the crimes who were looking for the stone. She was stopped, jailed, and sent to the pit, or so it seemed at the time. She's seen again in a 2007 story serial where Makuta Pterrodax attempts to recreate the Nui Stone from fragments embedded in the long-dead Tuyet's armor. That plan is foiled, and so she disappeared once more. An online story serial named Dark Mirror chronicled the Toa Empire, created by an alternate universe version of Toa Tuyet, but for all intents and purposes, she seemed to be finished in the main storyline. However, it was not to be. You see, listeners, Tuyet did not actually die. While she was locked up in the Colosseum all those years ago, Botar came in and teleported into her cell, and then teleported her out of the cell into a pocket dimension. You see, the Order of Maranui had somehow figured out that pieces of the Nui Stone were embedded in her body, making her a living battery of Toa power. They wanted to both lock her up and figure out how to mass-produce Nui Stone. So Botar sent her to this other dimension where no Toei existed, and then went and found a second Tuyet from yet another dimension, took that alternate Tuyet back to the main universe, altered her so that she had regular, non-powered, fake Nui Stone crystals embedded in her, and then took her to the pit, all the while keeping the original Tuyet locked in this pocket dimension and interrogating her about the stone. This went on for 1,500 years while the Order tried and failed to learn about the Nui Stone, and eventually, Tuyet convinced one of her guards that her cause was just, and so the guard helped her fake her own death in an explosion, all the while she used technology from this pocket dimension to escape, spending 2,000 years attempting to get back to the main universe. She used these 2,000 years to absorb Toei energy and eventually ended up back in the Metro Nui archives, happy to join the rebellion against Pterodax to take over the universe for herself. So you see the problem, right? It's not necessarily that any of that doesn't make sense or is out of character for the Order of Motonui or anything like that. Sure, within Bionicle's convoluted and complex rules, all of that makes a certain level of sense. But it's just such a ludicrous story. Tuyet served a purpose back in 2007. She was an anecdotal tale of a Toa gone wrong, and Makuta attempting to recreate her work as a distraction to keep Matoro occupied for a bit was a good way to follow that up and give it some level of relevance in the main present-day story, but bringing her back in the way that they did was just massively convoluted, and it's looked upon by many as one of the worst aspects of modern Bionicle storytelling. Before we get to the top spot on this list, I'd just like to give an honorable mention to the Lord of Skull Spiders, aka Lost, from Bionicle G2. I figured G2 should be counted somewhere in this list because they had a bunch of weirdly written characters. I was half tempted to put a Kimu on this list for the Prophecy of Light shenanigans, but in the end I decided to give Lost an honorable mention. Introduced as the first proper villain the Toei had to face in G2, Lost served as the guardian of the City of the Mask Makers, an evil entity sent by the influence of Makuta to retrieve the Golden Mask's power. It controlled the Skull Spider army using the Golden Mask of the Skull Spiders, commanding them to attack the villages of Okoto and fight the Toa. Eventually, Lost was defeated by the Toa, only to reappear in Bionicle Revenge of the Skull Spiders, where he was seemingly killed by the Protectors. Lost is a completely bizarre character and emblematic of many of G2's writing flaws. He has no backstory to speak of, nobody has any clue what he is, where he came from, how sentient he actually is, or really anything about him other than he's evil, controls the Skull Spiders, and serves Makuta. What's most baffling about him, though, is his source of power. Due to Bionicle G2's inconsistent storytelling across its various forms of media, how Lost actually controls the Skull Spider army is portrayed differently. Some places claim he uses a golden mask of the Skull Spiders, a ludicrously convenient mask that exists so he can control his army. Other sources claim he simply has a telepathic link with the Skull Spiders and then he needs no such mask to control them, a fact which is supported by the fact that the golden mask never actually appears once in the story proper. He's just such a non-character, an overblown, glorified animal beast with a vague power set and poorly defined history. But hey, at least he's a funny character the community loves to joke about. He's got that going for him, at least. Finally, the number one weirdly written Bionicle character is Motonui himself, the Great Spirit. Throughout the majority of Bionicle's run, Motonui was portrayed as a mythical figure, a deity to the residents of the Matoran universe who had been cast into a deep sleep by his brother Makuta. The Toa were tasked with awakening the Great Spirit so that all could be well once more. In reality, though, Motonui was much more than that. He was a powerful entity created by the great beings on the planet Spherus Magna 100,000 years ago. Motonui's giant robotic body housed the Matoran universe, intended to keep him functioning properly at all times. His purpose was to observe alien societies throughout the universe before completing his ultimate goal, the restoration of the fractured planet of Spherus Magna. Eventually, however, the Makuta inside of Motonui rebelled, using a specialized virus to poison Motonui and cause him to fall into a deep sleep over the course of 300 years. Eventually, Motonui crash-landed onto Aqua Magna, causing a large-scale catastrophe referred to as the Great Cataclysm inside his body. This damaged his memory, erasing some previous experiences as well as his ultimate mission from his mind. It also caused a malfunction in his camouflage system, leading to a multitude of flora sprouting up on the island that covered his face. He lay dormant for many, many years until he was finally awakened in 2008. Makuta Pterodax had taken control of the robot body, however, and he exiled Motonui from it, housed inside the Kanohi Ignika. Motonui eventually wound up on Barra Magna, where he would have many adventures, finally succeeding in taking control of a second prototype robot, defeating Makuta Pterodax and, with Pterodax's unwitting help, restoring Spherus Magna to its original state. He then opted to retreat into the Kanohi Ignika, allowing the residents of the reformed Spherus Magna to forge a new life without his influence. Motonui is a weirdly written character for one major reason: his abrupt shift from the goal of the plot, for 8 years, to main protagonist for the final year and a half. Awakening Motonui was the goal that the Toa, the actual protagonists of Bionicle, were striving for throughout the entire duration of the theme's run. When they finally did so, and revealed the plot twist that Pterodax had wrested control of the robotic body for himself, it was amazingly well executed. Everyone was looking forward to seeing how the heroic characters of Bionicle could execute a rebellion against Pterodax and save the day. Except the story didn't go that route. Instead, it jumped ship from the Matoran universe to a new planet called Barra Magna, began following an entirely new cast of 30 or so characters, and suddenly made Motonui a character. Not just a character, but the main character. The story became about Motonui's plight, his emotions, his fears, his goals, his friendships, his dreams. Not a bad idea by itself, but because the theme got cancelled less than a year after his character was introduced onto Barra Magna, this meant we got precious little time with him, and as a result, a lot of his character development came off as extremely forced. Couple that with the fact that he was written to be kind of a Gary Stu, for lack of a better term, and was able to constantly prevail in situations that he really shouldn't have been able to succeed in, while possessing very few definable faults, Motonui definitely deserves his spot at the top of this list. But as always, those were just my thoughts. What are yours? Do you have any weirdly written Bionicle characters you'd like to talk about? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and feel free to continue the discussion on the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. In addition, if you'd like to support us on Patreon, consider checking us out at patreon.com/ttvchannel. For as little as $1 a month, you can join our exclusive Patreon Discord server and help us bring back the TTV t-shirts. That'll be all for today. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.